Volkswagen has just unveiled the 2025 Volkswagen Golf GTi, which is a facelifted version of the 2021 model year. It's not a complete redesign. So what we're gonna do in this video is, of course, have a look at some of the spec and tech, what they did to the interior here that I'm not so sure why they did it. There are a couple of changes for the interior that are very good, and then there are a couple of changes that I don't necessarily understand. And we also have a couple of tweaks to the design, which I think helps this design beautifully, specifically in the front end. First of all, let's have a look at this article from Car and Drive. Let's see what's new here. We have a 2025 Volkswagen Golf GTi revealed with more power and improved tech. The hot hatch refresh includes a power bump to 262 horsepower, and this is for the European version that we see here, but I'm pretty sure that the US version is going to be exactly the same. You also have new colors and numerous improvements to the interior interface. Sadly, the manual is gone, so you can still buy a new manual Golf GTi today, but those days are numbered. So you have an interior tech upgrade that are meant to address the outgoing Golf's frustrating infotainment interface, and that was one of the big negatives I felt when I was reviewing this car, is just those tactile buttons. They're not really buttons, they're like touch buttons on the steering wheel, which has now been replaced by real button, thankfully. So you have a turbocharged 2-liter inline-4, and the US model output might be slightly different than the 262 horsepower here, but there will definitely be more than the current one with 241 horsepower. And as I said, no more 6-speed manual. You now have a 7-speed dual clutch is the only transmission for the GTi, which is kind of sad because I think this package is small of a hatchback. This is the very car personality of it that you want to have an option to have a manual, but we don't have that anymore. And if you look closely to spot the differences to the front bumper and the LED headlights and the taillights, and that's exactly what we're gonna do when we jump into Photoshop in just a minute. You have new wheel designs. Love these new wheels, looks fantastic. A newly available painted black roof, which you can see right here in between these red pillars of the greenhouse. You also have the option to have the VW badge light up in the front end. Now the steering wheel here, this is where I think the really cool changes happen, because it feels like maybe some would say we're going back to we're not moving forward, but they brought back the real buttons instead of the touch capacitive ones. That's what it's called, which were really hard to figure out when you're pressing them and when you're not pressing them. It just didn't feel good to use them. And while the touch sliders on the center screen that adjust volume and temperature remain, they're at least now illuminated, and those are these ones right here. Why don't we just bring back a simple little knob? Just turn the dial and you turn up the temp, or turn it down and you turn down the temperature. I don't know why we have to keep everything so complicated. And now we also have a much bigger screen. We have a 12.9-inch infotainment screen here that I don't feel looks anywhere as good as the 2021 model year. This is too big for me. I don't understand why we went to 12.9 inches, and this integration just feels so out of place, so much better in the pre-facelift. Volkswagen confirmed that the all-wheel drive Golf R will stick around in America as well. So with that said, let's jump in to Photoshop here and figure out what the design changes are on the new Golf GTi. First of all, talk about the front end design. What I like here is, if you look at the graphics, so we have the old one. I should have probably made it in the reverse order here, but now we have the old one to the right and the new one to the left. And the old one thing that I did a redesign on was this lower section first when this came out in 2021, because I'm not so sure about these mustache pieces or these rubber bands that go around here, as you can see. And then we have this interesting dip here in the lower grille that felt sort of out of place and didn't really have a connection to anything else. The headlights look fine, but I wanted to have more of an upright front fascia that it's facing forward. This has a much more sloping design, and the headlights feel like they're sitting on a slope, if that makes sense. So I wanted to have more of a traditional feel for the Golf GTi. Now looking at the new one and compare this to specifically the lower section, so have a look at this area specifically, this corner. If we go into the new one here, we don't have this weird dip that I talked about here. Now instead we have a clear straight line going across the entire top part. And looking at this and comparing it, this is the dip I'm talking about right here. Instead of having this, we now have this black piece going straight across, and I think that cleans everything up in a very, very nice way. We also have these wings at the bottom now sticking in here, and I think this is a pretty cool design detail. Adds a little bit more of a sportiness to this design. This is something that we didn't have in the 2021. Instead, the lower section was the straight part and the top part was the more complex piece. But I think having these wings at the bottom now feel more natural and looks a lot better. We also have a brand new headlights. So these are a little bit bigger than what we have now. We don't have this second section here in the new one. Instead, they go up in this area and then cuts right into this section of the grille in a one single line, as you can see right here. And I think these lights, they don't necessarily look better, but they look more modern because they're so much thinner than what they used to be in the 2021 model year. And as you can see, we don't have this second piece of daytime run light right here like we have in the 2021. We still have the same overall vibe for the front, and it's very hard. I agree with that. It's kind of hard to see the changes for the design, but I do think that the changes that Volkswagen actually made does a huge difference to this design. And up top you have the new blacked out roof, which I think is a pretty cool design detail as well. Now looking at the side view, there's really not a lot to talk about here when it comes to changes. The biggest change that I see here is that we have this area has this little GTi badge on the 2021. That is now gone because you can see this is just cleared out. Instead we have a GTi badge underneath the side mirror, and I think this looks out of place. This looks like just a GTi badge that only should be in the back because the letters themselves are separated here, typical to what we have on the rear end of cars, the model name. I think this integration was much cooler and much cleaner than what we have here. This looks very random to me. And also a big change here is of course the wheels. I was a fan of these GTi wheels from the 2021 model year, but I do prefer these ones. They have almost like an Alfa Romeo, almost Italian Lamborghini style to them with these big holes, specifically Alfa Romeo vibes is what I get from these wheels. And they look great. We still have the classic Golf proportions with a clean shoulder line right here, then cuts in. Look at this, we have the corner of the headlight right there. If we follow this line, it cuts right in to the shoulder line here and then connects to the rear end of the taillight here as well. We have a nice greenhouse design here, and of course this Golf thick C-pillar has to be intact in every single Golf. These lines right here, this is typical Golf, and if we don't have that, you can't really call it a Golf hatchback when it comes to the design. We also have, of course, this line at the bottom right here. Very German design, that every single line, specifically for Volkswagen, where every single line that the designers put on the car needs to have some sort of purpose, and that comes back here as well. Now looking at the rear end, not a lot of changes here as well. I can't really see what is new when it comes to the overall surfacing, but you can see that the taillights are brand new, and I love these new taillights because they have this tinted look to them. You can see just how much darker they are, even though the outline for the taillights themselves are completely the same. The internal pieces are a little bit different. We have these small LEDs here on the 2021. This also looks really good. It looks super chiseled and very modern still, but now we have bigger LEDs, as you can see in here, complementing this big daytime running light or brake light LED that goes around it. And again, this is also a very typical line here going in from the graphics of the taillight. Actually, you can see it if you zoom in on this taillight, you can see that it has a line up here, and this line now continues down into the bumper and having this waterfall design right here, creating this proper classic looking bumper for the Volkswagen Golf. Beautifully done. We also still, of course, have the dual exhaust down here at the bottom. Symmetry at its best when it comes to hatchback design. I think this is still a very, very beautiful design, the Volkswagen Golf. Now, looking at the interior here, this is where I'm split on my thoughts if this is a good update or a not as good as the 2021. Because look at the screen here on the 2024. What's going on with this screen? Why do we have to put this massive screen right in the face of the driver? an angle towards the driver as well, and have it be this badly integrated. I'm not sure what they were thinking with this, because this one, the 2021, looks so much better, and I think we can have all the functions that we have in this screen. We can just have it in the same software but in a smaller size and way better integrated like we have in the 2021 model year. It just doesn't make sense to me, this obsession with making the infotainment screen so big, specifically in a small car like a Golf. This detail for the interior, to me, is not an improvement over the previous one. What is a huge improvement, though, you can see these slippery buttons right here. These are not buttons, they're like tactile, as we talked about. We have the GTI badge down here at the bottom, and these are now normal, regular buttons. So you can actually feel that you're pressing on something. And this, as I said, some might say this is moving backwards, but I think this is actually moving forwards. I do wish that these sliders that we have here for the climate control settings, which is not the easiest to use either, I do wish that we just had, if it's going to have a big screen like this, we might as well fit some dials here for the climate control settings. Looks like we still have, for the driving settings, we still have these tactile button intact in the 2024. They didn't update that either. And no manual for the 2024 either. We do have this 7-speed dual clutch automatic, which is a fantastic automatic. It's a great automatic, but I still wish the Volkswagen would offer a manual transmission for their classic GTI car, which is the Golf.